probably have friends, well, all of you have friends, but maybe you probably have friends or know someone who was adopted, more specifically interracially adopted or transculturally adopted. On the screen you will see a book called Interracial Adoption, in which I read recently from a class that gave me light on the topic and the controversy. On the screen you will see Marlene and her child. She adopted 2 African-American children. When she adopted these children, she knew the benefits that she was going to provide for these children. She was going to give them homes, a loving home, and opportunities these children wouldn't have been able to have if they weren't adopted. However, she didn't realize how much of a struggle it was going to be, and how much she was going to have to face racism, whether it's interpersonal or structured racism, and she was also going to have to face the cultural identity of her children and how they were going to develop and grow up, not knowing much about their culture and heritage. She was also going to have to face being able to provide the same upbringing as if a child was raised by their own race and culture in our society today. Like I said, I didn't really know this was a controversy until I took a class on it. And before I took this class, when I heard interracial adoption, I thought what many of you probably think, and I think Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt and their children and how happy they look. And I basically think back to celebrities. So that's mostly what I thought until I took my Professor Young's class on interracial adoption. So exactly what is interracial adoption or transracial, transcultural adoption? According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, transracial adoption means placing a child who is one race or ethnic group with adopted parents of another race or ethnic group. In the United States, these terms usually refer to placing a child of color or children from another country with Caucasian adoptive parents. So obviously there's many pros to this, giving children opportunities that they may not have received. Many of these families they're going into are middle or upper class families, so they're provided with a better education, loving homes, food, family, and especially when some of these children come from areas in which they don't have those opportunities. Also, another thing that many people don't realize about interracial adoption is that you are eliminating some racism and some structural racism, because you're breaking the stereotypes by sending children raised to different schools and breaking the stereotypes of what families are. Also, you're breaking structural racism because many of these children are going to schools that usually don't accept children who may come from lower economic families, and in our society, many of the children from lower economic families are children of, I guess you can say, of different races or ethnicities. So these are very obvious pros. I'm about to give you a list of cons. It may seem like a much longer list than the pros, but you have to realize that these pros are such substantial. You're giving kids homes and families. There are definitely cons, and this is definitely why it's a controversy. Let's start off. I'm going to give you a bit of history of the cons, starting with Operation Baby Lift. Some of you may have heard of it, starting in Vietnam. After the Vietnam War, there's this thing called Operation Baby Lift, in which many children were left without their parents or without their homes and were adopted. However, many children were also bona fide orphans. They weren't really orphans. They had parents, and they were taken and they were brought to America and were put up for adoption. And then many of these parents, when they finally got to the U.S. from Vietnam, many of them were trying to seek custody of their children. So that's obviously one reason why it would be such a big controversy. But why is this still a controversy today? Well, more recently, Haiti earthquake, according to the New York Times, almost the same thing happened. It was one of the biggest baby lifts since the Vietnam War, and according to the New York Times, 33 improperly custodialized children were taken. 33 children were taken while they still either had parents or homes, but because of the circumstances, they were easily taken and put up for adoption. So that's definitely a reason why you could see why this could be a controversy. But to get more into the personal of the controversy and of the cons, I'm going to share with you a couple quotes that I found. And these quotes reflect the culture and identity problems we have when we interracially adopt, and also these struggles that parents have. First, I'm going to read you one by Janine Bishop. The older I get, the more I realize I can't avoid being Korean. Every time I look into the mirror, I am Korean. When I look at my family pictures, I feel that I stand out. I guess it shouldn't bother me, but sometimes it does. Even though I may seem very American, I want to be distinctively Korean. I know I'm not in terms of having all Korean traditions, but I don't want people to see me and say, because she grew up in a Caucasian family, and because she's very Americanized, she's white. That's not what I want anymore. This child obviously was battling with personal identification. She felt that she didn't have the culture that she wanted to, and that she felt misplaced in her family because she couldn't identify with them. I have another quote from a mother that I found on a blog from PACT website, and it says, I'm going to show a picture, but it says, my African-Canadian daughter is 7 years old. I recently found her scrubbing her skin with a nail brush. She told me she wanted to look like me. I've read many books with her that portray people from other races in a positive light. I've also always talked with her positively about her color. I'm upset by her desire to change her color. I'm not sure how to deal with this. This quote shows that even as a parent, even if you have an interracially adopted child and you provide them with a culture background, and you provide them saying it's okay to accept the differences between us, there's still going to be problems. There's still going to be issues with them trying to identify with you and trying to be like you. And then I have one more quote. My white student gets me over in ways his dark skin will not. I'm given the benefit of the doubt that I'm a normal citizen, a race and doing the right thing. I carry my racial privilege in a routine manner. Regardless of how anti-racist I may be, my son will be given such a pass, and he'll need to be prepared. This was from a Caucasian white father who adopted a African-American child. And basically what he is saying is that although he may not be racist, he doesn't know how to prepare his son for the racism that he may face, because he didn't grow up that way. So he didn't grow up in a culture where he was vulnerable to racism, whereas his son is. So in the end, does the pros outweigh the cons? Does giving children families and loving homes and the opportunities to higher education in school and higher success levels outweigh the cons of cultural identity and the bona fide orphans? And then can we educate parents enough to provide these children with culture, identity, and the ability to grow up in this society where there is racism? So basically, in the end, is it enough?
Wow.